talk about how I built my third all-time world record, how I built the 1,300-pound squat 4 years ago, actually, to the day. It doesn't feel, well, in some ways it does feel like that long ago, that it was 4 years ago. You know, my girls were about 6 months old. And so today I'm going to talk a little bit about the story of building the first 1,300-pound squat. I'm going to talk about my crew that came up there with me, that trained with me during this time and helped me accomplish this goal. I'm going to talk about what I did differently in my training, how I approach squatting in some different methods, some different approaches. One obvious thing that I did as far as my squat gear, changing to overkill strength, that's one of the best moves that I ever made. And not to get off on a tangent, but I think that one of the biggest mistakes that I made in my powerlifting career that I regret is not staying with overkill in 2015 when I left and went to Enzer for 5 years again. I think that's one of the biggest mistakes that I made. And John Enzer was very good to me, very good to me. Enzer gear is fantastic. It's good gear. The difference is the squat gear and the cut and the fit that Rudy Rosales could make for me. You know, I was one of the first people to use that prototype polyester suit. I forget what he calls it now, but it was one of his prototypes, you know, 4 or 5 years ago, and we tried it out and made it work. So shout out to Rudy. Rudy's always been a big supporter of my lifting, and he was a big part of why I was able to hit that 1,300-pound squat. And he was one of the people that came up and to Tennessee, to Rogersville, Tennessee. Rudy came up and was right there with me, literally alongside me, coaching me and cueing me. So big shout out to Rudy Rosales. That was pretty freaking awesome for him to come up there, and everyone that came up there that weekend. So let's start with that. So the sacrifices that people had to make. Now, keep in mind, this is during the pandemic. This is October 3rd, 2020. Nobody really knows what's truly going on with the pandemic. There's still shutdowns going on. So some of my friends literally couldn't travel. They had COVID restrictions. One in particular was playing and had NCAA restrictions. Another one had work restrictions. So I'd recently assembled a new team together. I had a new group of guys, and we'd only been training together for the most part for a couple of years at this point. And Steve Ullman came up there with me. Dave Hewitt came up there with me. Jonathan Bird met us from North Carolina, came across his drive. He's on the East Coast of North Carolina. So he had a long drive, about as long of a drive as we did, about 10-hour drive to get to Rogersville, Tennessee. And actually it was Bird's second year anniversary, marriage anniversary, that he was spending helping me make this happen. So huge shout out also to Tom. Tom came and was one of my newer training partners that I met through Steve. And Tom came up, and I had a team of really helpful people that came up to Rogersville 4 years ago and helped me get this thing done. So shout out to Bird, Tom, Steve, Dave, Rudy, Ant. Ant was there, and he got his first 1,000-pound squat there. Spud was there. My business partner, one of my business partners, Kristen, was there. And of course, Rhea, my awesome wife, Rhea. We put our two 6-month-old twins in the truck for 10 hours. And we drove to Tennessee during the pandemic. And these people sacrificed to help me get this thing done. So we drive 10 hours with twin girls. Everyone meets there. And I pretty much have a perfect day lifting. Now, things weren't all that perfect during this training cycle leading up to it. For those of you that have not watched part 1 of Gift of Injury 1306 that Bristol and I have put together with some help from my wife and some other people have put some hands in, but Bristol's taking the lead on this. maybe someone will drop the link in there. Maybe Bristol can drop the link to this. And I talk about all the things that I went through in 2020 leading up to this. And a quick recap of that is in April, the girls were born. Fantastic. I tear my pec. And then I get shingles. And then I get COVID. And I'm still trying to train for this meet. I committed to doing this meet earlier in the year. I hate pulling out of meets. I only pulled out of meets a couple times in my whole 21 years of competing. But I come down with COVID, and we don't really know. We don't know at the time in July, the first round of COVID, like how bad it is. So, I isolated myself for like 2 weeks, didn't see my girls. And after I got over COVID, I don't want to say for sure, but I probably got back to lifting too quickly. And then I avulsed my right bicep off the bone, the distal tendon, just pulled it off. And this was 1 month out. This is actually Nate, one of my training partners. It was one of his first training sessions with me. Came down from Wisconsin. We're training. I'm a week out from this meet, or a month out from this meet. Training's going well. It's all cylinders full ahead. And I ripped my bicep off deadlifting a month out. So I had to make a choice. Obviously that night I probably thought I was done, but I really wanted to do the meet. So that Saturday, after I threw a little bit of a fit, I may have smoked a joint and blew off a little bit of steam, and then came out and just hung out with the rest of the people that were deadlifting. And that Saturday, I started to think, I wonder if I can squat. I've never done a squat only meet. Maybe this would be a good opportunity to see if I can squat a personal record. I hadn't broke 1200 yet, so I wanted to break a personal record. Even if I knew I couldn't bench because the arm was gone. I got the corroborating MRI, and I knew that I was done as far as squatting and deadlifting. I needed a surgery, so I had to actually delay this surgery, and I found out that I could squat. And I didn't tell a bunch of people that I had an avulsed bicep. I had surgery scheduled for just it was 2 days off of the after the meet that I went into surgery. But I was able to hold on to the bar, and I obviously didn't squat or deadlift that day. But my friends supporting me, my wife, my training partners, everyone that came up, Bert and Minnie that put on the meet, it was all pretty cool. So now I'm going to get into giving you some takeaways that I think helped build the bigger squat. The first thing is I gained size and weight. For the longest time, I couldn't weigh over 270 pounds, or my body would feel like crap as a whole. As you read about in Gift of Injury, if you haven't read Gift of Injury, I highly suggest checking it out. It's my story of rebuilding from daily pain with a fractured sacrum and flattened discs to hitting the squat that we're talking about today 4 years ago, symptom and pain-free. I was able to go up and do the meet, take 4 attempts, squat 1125, 1215, 1285, and then 1306, and drive 10 hours home with 0 back pain. The only thing I had to worry about was going into surgery and hoping that my blood pressure and all the supplements and such that I had been taking didn't interfere with my ability to wake up after being exposed to the anesthesia. So thankfully, I woke up. I don't recommend doing going out for surgery right after a powerlifting meet, especially if you dabble in pharmaceuticals. So that was my risk that I took. It was a calculated risk that was probably calculated poorly, but here I am 4 years later. I'm still standing. Back to gaining weight. So for the longest time, I couldn't weigh over 270 pounds. What happened in 2019 is I came off for a bit. I came off supplementation to restore the fertility. You can see the whole story in the documentary that Bristol just dropped in the live chat. I took time off. I came off. When I came off, I actually got bigger. Granted, I wasn't as lean as I was, but my body adapted to being a little heavier. I got up to 270, 80, 90. And then pretty soon, while I was still clean, right when we got our positive pregnancy with Reagan and Riley, thank God, I was like 290 and I was still not taking anything. So once I got back on testosterone prescribed by my doctor, my weight ballooned to up over 300 pounds. So that was the first time in many years that I could even be over 270 without my hips and everything just feeling wrecked. I just couldn't handle the weight. And that was one of the things that you read about in Gift of Injury. I needed to drop about 10% of my body weight because compression was still not my friend. But once I dropped down from 295 to 265-ish, I was able to handle the demands of the meet. As we talk about in Gift of Injury in 2014, when I PR'd at 242 and made my comeback meet. Yeah, that was 10 years ago too in October. We're celebrating all kinds of things today. Yeah. So I was able to get far bigger. I knew that being smaller and being 265 was killing my squat, but it was either lift as a very small 275er or lift as a very big 242er. And I just kept going down to 242. I was far stronger than ever. I knew that anything that I picked up, I could squat if I could get it out of the rack. The other key thing that I did, or one of the other many things that I did, is I started going wider. Now, as I got bigger, I felt more stable going wider. Now, I'm very short-legged and long torsoed, so I'm built to squat, but I'm not really built to squat wide. So after a session with Dave Hoff in 2020, actually, in March of 2020, he was encouraging me to go wider for a long time, but for whatever reason, my hips hurting and other reasons, I didn't always do it. But everything kind of came together with the new overkill gear that I was wearing that fit me better, suited to go a little bit wider, damaging my hips a little bit, to be honest with you, going wider. It gave me a better result, but I have some hip arthritis and such. It's one of there's a cost to benefit ratio. I don't regret doing the 1,300 pound squat, but squatting as wide as I was there, if you go back and look over my older squat videos, in that 1,300 pound squat and the squats that day in that cycle, I'm significantly wider. And Dave Hoff did play a part in encouraging me to go wider. And as I got bigger, I felt better, wider, and more stable. But I'm a very short-legged person. I've got very short femurs and a long torso. So yeah, I'm not meant to squat super wide and deep. So in 2020, Hoff encouraged me to go wider. And then what he said was, get under the bar and go as wide as you're comfortable going. And then I went wider. And then he took me out like another 3 inches or so. And it felt awkward, but the stroke got even shorter. I felt better. And yeah, it banged my hips up. And I do have a little bit of hip arthritis, probably because of pushing those last 6 months going into the meet. But going wider and having less range of motion helped me. It dialed in my form with that perfect suit, the perfect body weight, the perfect form. All those different things contributed to hitting that first 1,300 pound squat 4 years ago. I would be dishonest if I didn't say that Dave Hoff didn't contribute to my squat going to the next level. Also, I got a Squat Max MD in 2019, and I always had issues with getting enough volume for my quads and my hamstrings with traditional methods. Now, I'm not talking about extensions and hamstring curls or sled drags. I'm talking about being able to build volume that I need for capacity to lock out big squats. Now, I'm not going to load up a heavy leg press and put all that compression on my spine. I'm not going to put a bar on my back and do 5 sets of 5 with 700 pounds in knee wraps to build the volume and build the quads that I need to after working up to 11 or 1,200 pounds on the squat. I'm not going to do it. The risk isn't worth the reward. But I got a Squat Max MD in 2019, and I blew my quads up by using the Squat Max MD. It's by far the best belt squat out there. I had an Elite FDS belt squat. It's good. I've used some of the other ones, the Pit Shark, the Rhino, but nothing compares to the Squat Max MD. The line of drive is directly underneath you, and that took my squat to the next level because I was able to stack that thing with as many plates as I could, and that was my secondary day of squatting. So I'd squat heavy, traditional, whether it was with the bar or specialty bar and chains and such, but I would get all my volume in after I squatted on the Squat Max, and I had a secondary day where I went heavy on the Squat Max as well, and I was able to build a lot of mass on my quads, my hamstrings, my glutes without all that axial load on top. So Squat Max MD, use my code BC $50 to save $50 on that, but there's nothing like it. Squat Max MD, it's the It's the tits. It's awesome. So huge shout out to Brian Hennessy there. It doesn't use lever arms or pulleys. It's directly underneath you, and the line of drive is perfect. You don't have to just believe me. Blaine Sumner, Ray Williams, Donnie Thompson, Ed Cohn. I mean, we've got the who's who that promote the Squat Max MD, and I know I'm probably missing someone that's a great squatter out there. So sorry if I missed you and you promote Squat Max MD, but it is the best belt squat out there. Here's another thing. I didn't torch my knees like a lot of belt squats do. I didn't torch my low back like a lot of belt squats do, especially if you have a lot of shear on the knees from a pulley or a lever arm that's pulling it out in front of you. It can bang your knees up pretty good. So I didn't damage my back or my knees just to build that volume like I was suspecting. Well, it's the way I used to train. What I used to do is do my heavy sets, then do drop down sets, pause squats and such with the barbell. But you get so strong after a while that unless you're using 600-700 pounds, it's not enough weight. So I was able to split the difference with the Squat Max MD and build the volume and hypertrophy with the Squat Max MD. I mentioned this a little bit earlier, and this is a big part. I came off TRT for about 8 months. 8 months I came off my TRT. And that was hard to do because that was stepping out of my comfort zone. But I suggest, I had a conversation with the Mr. Olympia one time, and he started to excel even more in his later age when he told me he started coming off for a bit of time and he responded a lot better when he got back on. That is not the reason why I came off. I came off so I could restore my fertility that I'd destroyed, as we talk about in the 1306 documentary that's linked in the live chat here. Also, speaking of which, we dropped a really cool video on Tuesday, article and video about when you should worry about back pain. Don't get behind the 8-ball with this. Stay ahead of the curve. And so check out this video and check out this article. When should back pain be a concern? Also, dropping today, yoga and Pilates for the athletes, dropping a little bit later today, this afternoon. Yoga and Pilates for the athlete, it can be great. Yoga and Pilates sometimes is fantastic for athletes. Other times, depending, especially if there's back pain involved, it could be the worst thing that they're adding to their program. So it has to be targeted. It has to be targeted Pilates moves or yoga moves, depending. So sometimes yoga is great. Other times, Pilates and yoga is absolutely terrible. Dropping tomorrow. Naomi Shepherd podcast. We filmed this at Swiss 2023. During this demo that I did, Naomi put the bar on her back for squat for the first time in like 8 months or so. And in this video, we talk about the assessment that we did, but at this point, she's back to lifting. So she'd already squatted. She's benching again. We hadn't quite started deadlifting and such, but we talk about her injury history. So you'll find this very interesting about Naomi, who has a 578 squat at 148 raw. That was the world record at the time. I don't know if it still stands, but she was hurting. She went to the hospital, to the ER multiple times for her back pain. No one had ever given her assessment. So check out this podcast that drops tomorrow, interview with Naomi Shepherd. Then also check out the series of Working with the Top Athlete. I think it's titled Working with Naomi Shepherd. And we're going to have that link tomorrow with the podcast in the description. And you see the assessment, the questions I ask her. You see the full assessment of the postures, loads, and movements that cause her pain. And then she lifts. But on that day in June, she couldn't even deadlift 135 off the blocks without pain. She couldn't even squat 95 pounds without shaking. If you notice in the video, she's shaking with less than 135 pounds on the squat. So we had to completely desensitize, rebuild her, and then slowly create adaptations with the things that I talk about in Gift of Injury, in 1020 Life, and the things that Stu talks about in Back Mechanic, with identifying the cause of pain and then reducing the stimuli to that, desensitizing, and then slowly getting back to building capacity, and then her back under the bar. But she needed a full year rebuild just to get that capacity. There's a lot of people that don't want to take the time to rebuild. Check out that series as the podcast drops tomorrow, and so does the interview, or so does, you can find the series underneath the podcast dropping, or you can just search it if you want to watch it now. Anyway, that drops tomorrow. Also, Q&A tomorrow. Bristol, what time are we doing the Q&A tomorrow? We're doing it 12 o'clock tomorrow. I'm answering your questions. So if you have questions, make sure you check out the community post. Drop them in there. I'll answer your questions the best I can. And tune in tomorrow at noon Eastern Standard Time. Back to how I built the world's biggest squat. Coming off supplements was huge. I hadn't been off completely in I don't know how long. I've probably said over the years how long it had been since I'd been off. But honestly, I can't remember now. It was probably closer to 15 years or 12, 13, 14 years or something like that I'd been completely off for 8 months, something like that. So that was tough for me. But when I got back on, I hyper responded to just the lowest dosage. And then I climbed over to 300 pounds and that gave me a nice kickstart in putting on size and getting significantly stronger. And that eventually put me into the 308 weight class. This is going to seem like a contradiction because you may think that since I have my own training approach, which is called 10-20 Life, and it stands for 10 and 20 weeks at a time for a lifetime of positive momentum in training and in life. And I teach you how to be your own coach, build your own program, and pick your own assistance work. Since I'm on my own program, people think that I'm like anti-band and chain or anything that resembles a conjugate-like approach where you rotate the exercises and have a max effort and a dynamic effort and all those things. You guys know what conjugate training is. That's not my style. But I started to incorporate more bands and chains, more raw lifting. I built my raw strength significantly when I took that time off, and that really carried over to the gear. I added bands and chains, raw and equipped. We changed bars a lot more, using bars that put me at a disadvantage, like a safety squat bar. So we changed up the bars, especially in the off season. Lots of heavy band tension, lots of chains. Didn't do a bunch of box squats at all. Added in some good mornings along with the Squat Max MD, and I smoked my core. I started doing all the things that I didn't want to do. I started doing heavier carries. I started doing more stir the pot. I started doing more sled drags. I actually started doing really heavy good mornings, which I hadn't done in a very long time. You know, the good morning for some people, risk reward is not there if they don't tolerate shear and compression very well. It could be a risky exercise. But I started incorporating 500, 600-pound good mornings where I kept my back locked in, but it really worked those spinal extensor muscles and helped me handle more weight. I felt it helped me quite a bit. Yeah, everything matters. So I just needed more time. I needed more time to dial everything in, and that reset that I had in 2019 when I came off, I wasn't competing. I started over, and then I took like a full re-examination of my training approach. You know, did I want to continue powerlifting? What did I want to do? Okay, well, I'm getting bigger. Let's go up a weight class. So I got bigger. I gained, I went from 270 to 300 plus pounds. Of course, you're going to get stronger with that, and your squat will probably go up too. Was it good for my health? No, definitely wasn't. I went wider on the squat. As I said, I brought my stance out along with the overkill gear. That was the moneymaker right there. Dialed in perfect gear from Overkill along with some help from a legendary lifter and Dave Hoff that suggested going out wider. He is by no means the only person that would say, hey, go wider, but it happened to land that day with me, and I went wider, and it helped. Did I pay for it a little bit with my health by being heavier? Yes. Did I pay for it a little bit by going wider a little bit on the squat? Yes, I did. I added the Squat Max MD, more volume, and built the living crap out of my quads with tons of volume. If you look for it, you can see a video of me squatting with 15 plates on the Squat Max MD, doing some overload, working on the top end of that squat. And I can tell you, when I picked up anything out of the rack, it just felt so light. Coming off the supplements played a huge part in that. And then being a little bit more open-minded with my training. Bands and chains more raw squatting. Man, we loaded up some serious bands and chains, 400 or 500 pounds of band tension. We'd have the big blue band on there, the big gray band on there, the orange band on there, and that thing would pull. But I got out of my comfort zone. And did things that I really didn't want to do, that I was kind of stuck in doing for years and years with not very much accommodating resistance. And I sure needed to gain some weight and blow up my quads. And let's be real, I needed to come off for a bit and let my body respond a bit well. I want to circle back to a couple different things too that I want to underscore. It wasn't the smartest move for me to go and squat with one arm, basically. I acknowledge that. I hid that from a lot of people. I know that my bicep could have died. I could have had some serious complications with that. I ended up waiting 5+ weeks to get surgery after my bicep had been attached. They wanted to do the surgery the next day when I got the MRI. So they wanted me in the OR within a couple of days. And when I said that I couldn't, I had to fib a little bit and say that why I had to delay it 5 weeks somehow. So that was a hoop that I jumped through. I fully acknowledge that was risky, and that wasn't the smartest thing that I'd ever done. Not to mention being able to keep the bar on my back. With the torn bicep, all bets are off, you know? But I want to thank the team. You know, I trained with Samson for 15 years straight at Drigger's place. And had a lot of good memories there, had a lot of good training partners. Some of the guys followed me over to my house. Shane Ford followed me there. He's been a great training partner. Steve Ullman has been a great training partner. Dave Hewitt. Tom, as I mentioned before, he's no longer with us. He's not dead. He's actually he might as well be. He's in New Mexico. But Tom's over there in New Mexico. And the people that came out to help me in a very inconvenient time for everyone in their life during the pandemic. Bird coming across the country, bringing Liz, helping with the girls. Rudy coming cross country. Kristen coming cross country. Spud being there. So many people were there supporting. And you know, the cool thing is 2 people reached out to me right away after I hit the squat. And it's 2 of the greatest lifters to ever live. And it was cool. Donnie Thompson was the first person to reach out to me. And I think that's cool because Donnie was someone who chased that 1,300-pound squat. Donnie's also someone that put 1,300 pounds on his back and came up and got red lighted. In a lot of ways, you might think that Donnie would be the one that's most upset that I get my squat passed and he didn't, but he was very gracious and he was very kind. And I appreciate him reaching out and congratulating me. Even if we don't talk a bunch. I've never been buddies with Donnie. I've always looked up to Donnie. I was there when he totaled the first 3,000 pounds. Hell of a lifter, smart guy, funny. But we've never been like buddies or anything. But the fact that he just reached out and said that. And then the second person that was cool was Blaine Sumner reached out to me right away and said something. And he said congratulations is what he said. And so it's cool. It's cool that happened. And I really appreciate the team of people that came up there to support me, and Steve for wrapping my knees, Bird for calling the weight, Rudy for helping call the weight and coach. I didn't have to worry about anything that day. And then Ant, even though he was lifting, he was all supporting me. Osa was there supporting me. It was really cool. So do I miss lifting? Do I miss competing? No, I do not miss competing. I don't miss the stress that comes with that. I don't wish that I could go back and do some things over. I do have some regrets with competing, but in these 4 years, it's been a different part of my life for sure. But I don't miss it. It was time to hang it up 4 years ago today. So other than wishing that I would have hit bigger numbers throughout, wishing that I would have maybe not competed so much at 242, wishing that I would have made some better choices in training over the years. And then just screwing things up, bombing out, and making bad decisions. Other than that, I don't really have regrets. Now, in my 60s, as the joints are going to be less and less happy with me, I might have other thoughts, but I'm glad that I got out when I did. So to summarize today, there's a lot of components that help me become the first person to squat 1,300 pounds. My support system, my awesome wife, it was cool that my girls were up there. Obviously, they're 6 months old. They're not going to remember that, but I have pictures to be able to show them of hanging out with them on the stroller. And of course, Rhea doing all that she could to keep them contained during the meet in a loud, crazy environment. Liz Bird, Jonathan Bird's wife, came and helped. That was so awesome and so selfless of them to come over on their freaking anniversary. My training partners and my sponsors at the time. Spud's always been good to me. Very appreciative of him and him supplying me with things over the years. Jack's Nutrition was a big help at that point. Ken down in Miami, huge help with supplements and sponsoring me there. Of course, Overkill Strength. And just a lot of people that have been really good to me and helped me. But there were certain things that I needed in the team training and some time off and building my quads out to 33 inches or 34 inches, whatever they ended up being at the time. And then widening out just a little bit. Getting out of my comfort zone is a common theme there. Getting out of my comfort zone by squatting wider. Getting out of my comfort zone using bands and chains and specialty bars and lifting more raw. I didn't want to do that. Changing things up. So if there's any takeaways from how I built the biggest squat at the time, first 1,300 pound squat, it's get out of your comfort zone. And there's going to be a cost to benefit ratio with a lot of things. I know I'm going to pay for the miles that I put on my body. I know I'm going to pay for that 1,300 pound squat in my knees and my hips over the years. Thankfully, my back is still pain and symptom free. But I know there's a cost to doing business. So I'm thankful. I don't miss the competing. I like helping people build their lifts and return from back injury and get back on the platform or back to rucking or special forces or military, whatever it may be. But these are the main things that I would say helped contribute to me hitting that 1,300 pound squat. And Bird texted me the other day and said, man, we should have went 1,350 or something like that. And here's my thought on that. Do I think that I could have squatted maybe 1,350 that day? Maybe, but again, that's just speculating. I think that I probably would have wiped out. I think the limiting factor wouldn't have been my back. It wouldn't have been my knees. It would have been my feet or my ankles, because any little teeter of the bar then was more than what I had, is because if you notice, the bar teetered a little bit as I was letting it settle. I might have blown out an Achilles or a calf or a muscle in the foot or a bone in the foot or something like that. And then that could have been absolutely catastrophic. I do remember walking up to the bar that last time 4 years ago. And I remember saying to myself, and I looked up and I was like, God, let me do this one more time. Let me come out of this unscathed and I will be done. So I made a promise to God that I just wouldn't do this anymore, because unhealthy, I'm purple, I'm 307 pounds, I'm loaded to the gills with supplements. And I promised them that I'd be done after this last lift, and I kept that promise. That's the last time I've squatted in a competition, and heavy for that matter. And that part of me stayed there, and I'm done with it. So those are the things that I think contributed the most. Of course, God's help and my faith. Also, taking practical steps of stepping away from something for a while and rebuilding, going outside the box, building your weak points, taking advice from people, especially if they're legendary lifters, and just getting a little bit lucky and having it all come together for you on one day. And then also tearing your bicep off, so you really focus on that squat only for the last month. So that actually played in my favor a little bit.
Hope you enjoyed today's video. Remember, like, subscribe, share, click the notifications, because we drop videos twice a week. We also have a live stream every Friday where I answer your questions. Click below to see the latest video that we uploaded. Also, for our products, our CBD, our books that correspond with these videos, it's down in the description. For more information about all things Brian Carroll and PowerAct Strength, go to poweractstrength.com. You could book a consult both virtually and in person with me. Enjoy your week, and thank you so much.